The sound of breaking crystal echoed through the marble halls of the Whitmore estate like a gunshot in the night. Alexander Whitmore's fingers tightened around the leather portfolio he'd been reviewing, his jaw clenching as another crash followed the first. He'd known this evening would be difficult. Catherine had started drinking before lunch, but he hadn't expected it to escalate this quickly. At 33, Alexander had built an empire that most men could only dream of. Tech companies, real estate holdings, venture capital firms, his Midas touch had turned every investment into gold. Yet as he stood in his study, surrounded by the trappings of success, he felt utterly powerless. The woman he'd proposed to 6 months ago, the socialite who'd seemed so perfect at charity galas and business dinners, had become someone he barely recognized. "Where is she?" Catherine's voice shrieked from the direction of the kitchen, slurred and venomous. "Where is that little brat?" Alexander's blood ran cold. He dropped the portfolio and strode toward the commotion, his Italian leather shoes clicking against the polished floors. As he rounded the corner into the expansive kitchen, the scene before him made his heart stop. Catherine stood near the marble island, swaying slightly, an empty wine bottle dangling from her manicured fingers. Her designer dress was wrinkled, her perfectly styled blonde hair disheveled. But it wasn't Catherine who commanded his attention. It was the young woman pressed against the far wall, a tiny girl clutched protectively in her arms. Maria Santos had worked for Alexander for nearly 2 years. At 28, she was one of the most dedicated employees he'd ever had, quiet, efficient, and unfailingly kind. Her daughter, little Emma, occasionally accompanied her to work when daycare arrangements fell through. Alexander had always appreciated Maria's work ethic and had told her that Emma was welcome whenever necessary. The 3-year-old was a sweet child with dark curls and enormous brown eyes that reminded him of a fawn. Those eyes were now wide with terror. "Catherine, what's going on here?" Alexander kept his voice steady, though fury simmered beneath the surface. This woman," Catherine spat, gesturing wildly with the bottle, "lets her child run wild through your house. Do you know what that little monster did?" "She touched my purse. My Hermes bag." Maria's arms tightened around Emma, who had buried her face in her mother's shoulder. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Whitmore," Maria said softly, her voice trembling. Emma was just looking at the pretty colors. She didn't mean any harm. "I told her not to touch anything, but she's only 3. Only 3. Catherine laughed bitterly, stumbling forward a step. "Old enough to know not to put her grubby little hands on things that cost more than her mother makes in a year. That's enough." Alexander's voice cut through the room like steel. He moved between Catherine and Maria, his tall frame blocking his fiancée's advance. "You need to calm down and go upstairs. Don't you dare tell me what to do." Catherine's face flushed red, her eyes blazing with alcohol-fueled rage. "This is going to be MY house too, and I won't have the help's children treating it like a playground." In that moment, watching Catherine hurl insults at a frightened child and her mother, Alexander saw his future with devastating clarity. How had he missed the signs? The dismissive comments about service workers, the casual cruelty disguised as jokes, the way she treated anyone she deemed beneath her station. He'd been so focused on building his empire that he'd failed to see the empire of ice and indifference he was about to marry into. "Maria," he said quietly, not taking his eyes off Catherine, "please take Emma to the guest house. You're both welcome to stay there tonight. Take tomorrow off with pay." "Mr. Whitmore, I'm so sorry," Maria began, but Alexander held up a hand. "You have nothing to apologize for. Please go. I'll handle this. As Maria hurried past them, Emma's small voice piped up, Mama, why is the pretty lady so angry? The innocence of that question hung in the air like an accusation. Catherine opened her mouth to respond, but Alexander stepped closer to her, his voice low and dangerous. If you say one word to that child, we're finished. Do you understand me? Catherine's eyes widened, perhaps finally recognizing that she'd crossed a line. Alex, I'm just stressed. You know how the wedding planning has been. There isn't going to be a wedding. The words came out with absolute certainty, surprising even Alexander with their finality. But as soon as he said them, he knew they were true. He couldn't marry this woman. He wouldn't build a life with someone who could terrorize a child and her mother without remorse. Catherine's face went white. You can't be serious. Over some maid and her brat? Over the person you've shown yourself to be, Alexander replied. This isn't about Maria or Emma. This is about you, Catherine. Who you are when you think no one important is watching. The next hour passed in a blur. Catherine oscillated between tears, rage, and desperate apologies. She threw her engagement ring at him, a 5-carat diamond that skittered across the marble floor, and screamed that he was throwing away everything they could have had. She called him ungrateful, said he'd regret this, threatened to ruin his reputation. Alexander stood firm, arranging for his driver to take her back to her apartment in the city, making it clear that she should collect her belongings from the estate another day when he could arrange to be absent. When the house finally fell silent, Alexander found himself standing alone in the kitchen, surrounded by broken crystal and spilled wine. His phone buzzed already. He could see texts from Catherine's friends, from mutual acquaintances, asking what had happened. The gossip mill would be churning by morning. He should have felt devastated. His engagement was over. His personal life was about to become tabloid fodder. He'd have to explain this to his parents, his board members, his investors. Instead, he felt an overwhelming sense of relief. And beneath that relief, something else stirred. A memory of Emma's frightened eyes, of Maria's trembling voice, of the way a mother's first instinct had been to shield her child with her own body. Alexander looked out the window toward the guest house, where a single light burned in the darkness. He'd made the right decision, he knew that. But as he stood there in his empty mansion, surrounded by all the markers of his success, he couldn't shake the feeling that he'd been protecting the wrong people all along. The real question was, what came next? Dawn broke over the Whitmore estate with a gentle persistence of hope, golden light spilling across manicured lawns and through floor-to-ceiling windows. Alexander hadn't slept. He'd spent the night in his study, nursing a single glass of scotch and watching the hours tick by, thinking about choices and consequences, about the life he'd built and the life he actually wanted to live. At 6 a.m., he showered and dressed, choosing casual clothes, jeans and a soft gray sweater, instead of his usual business attire. He had calls to make, damage control to manage, but first he needed to check on Maria and Emma. The guest house sat nestled among ancient oak trees at the edge of the property, a charming cottage that Alexander had renovated years ago for visiting family members who never seemed to visit. As he approached, he could hear sounds from within, the clatter of dishes, a child's bright laughter, and Maria's gentle voice singing something in Spanish. He hesitated at the door, suddenly uncertain. What was he going to say? He knocked softly. The singing stopped. Footsteps approached, and then the door opened to reveal Maria, her dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, wearing the same clothes from last night. Her eyes were wary, but her voice was polite. Mr. Whitmore. Good morning. Good morning, Maria. I wanted to check on you and Emma. How are you both doing? Maria's shoulders relaxed slightly. We're okay. Thank you for letting us stay here. The guest house it's beautiful. Much nicer than our apartment. Mama, Mama, I made a tower. Emma's voice called from inside. A small smile tugged at Maria's lips. She's been up since 5:30. I've been trying to keep her quiet, but 3-year-olds don't really understand the concept of sleeping in. May I come in? Alexander asked. I'd like to talk to you, if that's all right. Maria opened the door wider, and Alexander stepped into the cozy living room. Emma sat in the middle of the floor, surrounded by what appeared to be every cushion from the couches, stacked into a precarious tower. When she saw Alexander, her eyes went wide, and she scrambled behind her mother's legs. The gesture struck Alexander like a physical blow. This child was afraid of him, or rather, afraid of what his world represented. It's okay, mi amor, Maria murmured, stroking Emma's curls. Mr. Whitmore is a kind man. You don't need to be scared. I'm not going to hurt you, Emma, Alexander said softly, crouching down to the child's level. I think your tower is very impressive. You're quite the architect. Emma peeked out from behind Maria's legs. What's an architect? Someone who designs buildings. Someone very creative and smart, just like you. The little girl considered this, then stepped out from her hiding place. Do you like my tower? I love it. Although, Alexander tilted his head thoughtfully, I wonder if it might be even more stable if you put this blue cushion on the bottom. It's wider, see. Emma's face lit up, and she immediately began reconstructing her tower with serious concentration. Maria watched this exchange with an expression Alexander couldn't quite read. Can we talk? He asked, standing and gesturing to the kitchen area. They moved to the small breakfast nook while Emma remained absorbed in her architectural endeavors. Maria folded her hands on the table, her posture perfectly composed, but Alexander noticed they were trembling slightly. First and foremost, Alexander began, I want to apologize for last night. What happened was unacceptable, and you and Emma should never have been subjected to that kind of behavior in your workplace, or anywhere else. Mr. Whitmore, you don't need to apologize. It wasn't your fault. Please let me finish. He ran a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of uncertainty. I've been thinking a lot about what happened, about what it revealed, and I realized that I've been blind to a lot of things. Maria watched him carefully, saying nothing. Catherine and I are no longer engaged, he continued. That relationship is over. But that's not why I'm here. I'm here because I need you to know that you have a job for as long as you want one. What happened last night doesn't change your position here. If anything, I hope it might improve your working conditions. I appreciate that, Mr. Whitmore. But Maria paused, choosing her words carefully. I've been thinking, too, about whether this is the right environment for Emma. She loves coming to work with me, but after last night, I don't know if I can ask her to come back here. The thought of Maria leaving hit Alexander with unexpected force. What if things were different, he found himself saying. What if he didn't have to worry about Emma being in the way? What if she was welcomed? What if I set up a proper space for her, with toys and books and everything she might need? Maria's eyes widened. Mr. Whitmore, that's incredibly generous, but I can't ask you to. You're not asking, I'm offering. Alexander leaned forward, surprised by his own urgency. Maria, in the 2 years you've worked for me, you've never been late, never complained, never asked for anything beyond your salary. You take pride in your work. You're raising a wonderful daughter on your own. And last night, when faced with someone who could have made your life very difficult, you didn't fight back. You just protected your child. That's... He paused, searching for the right words. That's real strength. Real grace. Maria's eyes grew shiny with unshed tears. My daughter is my whole world, Mr. Whitmore. Everything I do for her, to give her a better life than I had. Tell me about it, Alexander said. About your life. About Emma's father, if you don't mind sharing. For a moment, he thought she might refuse. But then she glanced at Emma, still happily building, and began to speak. Emma's father and I met when I was 23. I was working 2 jobs, taking night classes. He was charming, said all the right things. We got married fast, too fast. I thought I'd found my partner, someone to build a life with. Maria's voice grew soft. But 6 months into the marriage, I got pregnant and everything changed. He didn't want a child. Said it would tie him down, ruin his freedom. When I told him I was keeping the baby, he left. Filed for divorce before Emma was even born. I'm sorry, Alexander said quietly. Don't be. It showed me who he really was. And it gave me Emma, who is the best thing that ever happened to me. Maria wiped at her eyes. But it's been hard. Daycare costs more than my old apartment rent. My mother helps when she can, but she's getting older, and her health isn't good. That's why I'm so grateful for this job. The salary you pay, it's more than I ever dreamed I could make. It's letting me save for Emma's future. For college someday. Alexander thought about his own childhood, private schools, summer camps in Switzerland, a trust fund that had made him a millionaire before he'd earned his first dollar. He'd never had to worry about whether there would be food on the table or whether his parents could afford to take him to the doctor. What are you studying? He asked. You mentioned night classes. I was studying business administration. I had to put it on hold when Emma was born, couldn't manage school, work, and a baby. But I'd like to finish someday. Maybe when she's in school full-time. What if you could finish now? Maria looked at him, confused. I don't understand. What if I adjusted your schedule so you could attend classes? What if Emma had a safe place to stay here during those hours, maybe with a qualified caregiver? What if your education was an investment I was willing to make in a valued employee? Mr. Whitmore. Maria's voice cracked. Why would you do that? Why would you care about my education? It was a fair question. Alexander wasn't sure he had a complete answer yet. But he thought about the previous night, about the moment he'd seen Maria shielding Emma, about the disgust he'd felt watching Catherine demean them both. Because talent and potential have nothing to do with circumstance, he said finally. Because I've spent my entire life surrounded by people who had every advantage handed to them, and I'm not sure it made any of them better people. And because... He paused, meeting her eyes. Because last night, you and your daughter reminded me what really matters. And it's not crystal stemware or designer purses. A tear rolled down Maria's cheek. I don't know what to say. Say you'll think about it. Say you'll let me try to make things right. Before Maria could respond, Emma appeared at Alexander's elbow, tugging on his sweater. Mr. Alexander? Can you help me reach the tall shelf? I want to make my tower taller than Mama. Alexander looked down at the little girl, at her hopeful expression and her complete trust that he would help her. Something in his chest tightened. Absolutely, he said, standing. But I should warn you, I'm an excellent tower building assistant. Your tower might end up taller than me. Emma giggled, a sound like wind chimes, and grabbed his hand to pull him toward her cushion construction. Her small hand in his large one felt impossibly fragile and impossibly important. As he helped Emma stack cushions, carefully showing her how to balance them for maximum height, he caught Maria watching them with an expression of wonder. And Alexander realized that sometime in the last 12 hours, his entire world had shifted on its axis. He'd thought he'd been living a full life. Now he wondered if he'd been living at all. 3 weeks passed, and the Whitmore estate underwent a transformation that had nothing to do with interior design and everything to do with laughter. Alexander had kept his promise. A sunny room on the main floor, originally a sitting room that no one ever sat in, had been converted into what Emma called the magic playroom. It had bookshelves stocked with children's literature, a craft table, educational toys, and a reading nook with cushions soft enough to sink into. A kind, grandmotherly woman named Mrs. Chun had been hired as Emma's caregiver during the hours Maria attended classes. Maria had been skeptical at first, certain that this arrangement couldn't last, that Alexander would wake up one morning and realize the disruption to his pristine life wasn't worth it. But Alexander had been insistent, and gradually, Maria had allowed herself to hope. "Mr. Whitmore, your 11 o'clock is here," Marcus, Alexander's assistant, announced from the doorway of the study. Alexander looked up from his laptop, where he'd been reviewing quarterly reports. "Thanks, Marcus. Give me 5 minutes." As Marcus left, Alexander's attention was drawn to the window. Below, in the garden, he could see Emma chasing butterflies while Mrs. Chen watched from a nearby bench. The little girl's laughter carried on the breeze, and Alexander found himself smiling. It had been happening a lot lately, these moments where he'd catch himself pausing in his work to watch Emma play, or listening for the sound of Maria's voice as she moved through the house. The estate felt different now, alive somehow, as if it had been holding its breath for years and had finally exhaled. His phone buzzed. A text from his mother. "Lunch on Thursday? We need to talk about this Catherine situation. People are asking questions." Alexander sighed. His broken engagement had indeed become the talk of their social circle. Catherine had spread her version of events, that Alexander had become irrationally obsessed with the help and had thrown away their future over nothing. Some people believed her. Others reserved judgment. His mother, practical as always, just wanted damage control. He typed back, "Thursday works. 1 p.m. at the club." Before he could put the phone down, another text came through, this one from his college roommate, Derek. "Dude, is it true you dumped Catherine for your maid? That's either the stupidest thing you've ever done or the most romantic. Can't decide which." Alexander stared at the message, frowning. Was that what people thought? That this was some kind of romantic entanglement? The idea made him uncomfortable, though he couldn't quite articulate why. Yes, he'd been thinking about Maria more than was probably appropriate for an employer. Yes, he'd found himself engineering excuses to check in on her and Emma. And yes, when Maria had shown up to work that first Monday after the incident, looking nervous and uncertain, his relief at seeing her had been disproportionate to the situation. But that didn't mean... "Mr. Whitmore?" Mrs. Chen appeared in the doorway, Emma's hand in hers. "I'm so sorry to interrupt, but Emma has a question she's very insistent about asking you." Emma peered around Mrs. Chen's legs, her dark curls bouncing. "Can you come see my painting? It's for you." All thoughts of his mother and Derek and the gossip circuit evaporated. "Of course I can. Lead the way, Miss Emma." Emma's face lit up, and she tugged him toward the playroom, chattering the entire way about colors and butterflies and how Mrs. Chen had taught her to mix blue and yellow to make green. Learn to doubt her own creativity. In the center, Alexander could make out what might have been a house and several stick figures. "This is you," Emma said, pointing to the tallest stick figure. "And this is Mama, and this is me, and this is Mrs. Chen. We're all at your house, and we're happy." Alexander crouched down to Emma's level, studying the painting with the seriousness it deserved. "This is beautiful, Emma. Is this really for me?" "Uh-huh. Because you're nice, and you fix the scary lady problem." Out of the mouths of babes. "Well, I'm honored. I'm going to hang this in my office where I can see it every day." "Really?" Emma's eyes went wide. "In your really important office?" "In my really important office," Alexander confirmed. "Because this is really important art." Emma threw her arms around his neck in an impulsive hug, nearly knocking him over. Alexander froze for a moment, then carefully wrapped his arms around the small girl, feeling something crack open in his chest. When had he last hugged anyone? When had anyone shown him uncomplicated affection that wanted nothing in return? "Emma, mi cielo, don't attack Mr. Whitmore." Maria's voice came from the doorway, embarrassed and amused. "It's fine," Alexander said, standing with Emma still clinging to him like a koala. "We were just discussing her masterpiece." Maria's expression softened as she looked at them. You don't have to encourage her. She'll be in your office every day if you're not careful. Would that be so terrible? The words came out before Alexander could think better of them. Their eyes met, and something passed between them, a current of understanding, of recognition. Maria looked away first, a faint blush coloring her cheeks. Emma, come on. Mr. Whitmore has work to do, and you need lunch. Can Mr. Alexander have lunch with us? Emma asked, looking between them hopefully. Emma, Mr. Whitmore is a very busy man. Actually, Alexander interrupted, I was just about to take a break. If you don't mind the company. Maria looked uncertain, but Emma was already cheering and dragging both adults toward the kitchen. Lunch was simple, sandwiches and fruit that Maria prepared while Emma told elaborate stories about the butterflies in the garden and how one of them had landed on her finger and told her secrets. Alexander found himself drawn into her imaginative world, asking questions about the butterfly's name and where it lived and what secrets it had shared. You're very good with her, Maria observed quietly while Emma was distracted with her sandwich. She's an easy kid to be good with, Alexander replied. She's smart, creative, kind. You've done an incredible job raising her, Maria. Maria's eyes grew soft. Thank you. That means a lot, especially coming from you. Why especially from me? Because you're, successful, important. You've built this amazing life. And you're taking time to have lunch with a 3-year-old and pretend that butterflies tell secrets. Not many people in your position would do that. Alexander thought about the lunch he'd had last week with potential investors, all posturing and power plays, everyone trying to prove they were the smartest person in the room. He'd left that meeting exhausted. He looked at Emma, at her joyful mess of a sandwich-eating technique, at the way she hummed while she chewed. He felt more energized than he had in months. Maybe that says more about people in my position than it does about me, he said. Over the following days, a routine developed. Alexander found himself taking lunch in the kitchen more often than not, listening to Emma's stories, discussing Maria's classes, asking about their lives in a way he'd never bothered to ask about anyone's life before. He learned that Maria's favorite color was deep purple, that she'd wanted to be a teacher when she was young, that she made the best flan he'd ever tasted. He learned that Emma was afraid of thunderstorms but loved rain, that she wanted a puppy more than anything, that she could recite entire books from memory. He learned what it felt like to care about people not for what they could do for him, but for who they were. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, the lonely mansion became a home. But Alexander's growing attachment to Maria and Emma didn't go unnoticed. His mother arrived for their Thursday lunch with an expression that warned of an impending interrogation. Eleanor Whitmore was a formidable woman, silver-haired, impeccably dressed, with eyes that missed nothing. She'd been a force in society for decades, and she'd taught Alexander early that reputation and perception mattered almost as much as reality. So, she said, after they'd ordered, are we going to discuss the elephant in the room, or are we going to pretend everything is normal? I'm not sure what you're referring to, Alexander replied mildly. Don't play games with me, Alexander. I'm talking about this situation with Catherine, and with this woman and her child. The situation with Catherine is simple. We weren't compatible, and I ended the engagement. The situation with Maria is that she's an excellent employee whom I value and support. Eleanor studied him over her reading glasses. People are talking. Let them talk. They're saying you've lost your mind, that you threw away a perfectly suitable match for some infatuation. Catherine was never suitable, Alexander said firmly. I was just too busy to notice. And Maria is not an infatuation. She's a person who works for me, whose education and future I'm choosing to invest in. No different than the scholarship program we fund at the university. It's very different, and you know it, Eleanor said. You don't have scholars' children painting you pictures and eating lunch with you every day. Alexander felt his jaw tighten. How do you know about that? Because Marcus is worried about you, and he called me. Because the entire staff is watching you transform from a focused businessman into someone who rearranges his schedule around a 3-year-old's nap time. And is that a problem? Eleanor was quiet for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then, surprisingly, she smiled. Actually, no. It's the most alive I've seen you in years. Alexander blinked, taken aback. What? Do you think I didn't notice how unhappy you were with Catherine? How you treated your engagement like another business merger? How you never smiled anymore? Eleanor reached across the table and patted his hand. I'm your mother, Alexander. I know you. And I know that something has changed in you these past few weeks. You sound different on the phone. You look different. Different how? Like you remember how to feel something. The words hit Alexander harder than any criticism could have. Because she was right. He had been numb, going through the motions, checking boxes on life's expected timeline without ever asking if it was the life he wanted. I'm not saying this won't be complicated, Eleanor continued. The social implications, the power dynamics, the fact that she works for you, these are real concerns. But I'm also saying that I'd rather see you genuinely happy with complications than miserably comfortable with perfection. Mom, I'm not. Maria and I aren't. Alexander struggled to find the words. It's not like that. Isn't it? Eleanor's eyes were gentle. Or is it just not like that yet? The question followed Alexander home, echoing in his mind as he pulled into the estate's driveway. Was he developing feelings for Maria? Was that what this was? He found her in the garden, reading while Emma napped in the playroom. She looked up as he approached, shielding her eyes from the sun. How is lunch with your mother? Enlightening, Alexander said, settling onto the bench beside her. She's more perceptive than I give her credit for. Mothers usually are. Maria closed her book. Is everything okay? I don't know, Alexander admitted. Maria, can I ask you something? And will you be honest with me? Of course. Do you think I'm doing the right thing? With the playroom and supporting your education and all of this? He gestured vaguely. Or am I just creating an awkward situation that's going to end badly? Maria was quiet for a moment, considering. I think you're doing a kind thing. Maybe an impractical thing, from a certain perspective. But a kind thing. She paused. Although I'd be lying if I said I wasn't worried about what happens when the novelty wears off. The novelty? Of having us here. Of this, whatever this is. You're used to a certain kind of life, Mr. Whitmore. Quiet. Orderly. We're anything but that. Emma is loud and messy and full of questions. Eventually, that might become irritating rather than charming. What if it doesn't? Alexander found himself saying, what if I've been living the wrong kind of life and you and Emma are showing me what the right kind looks like? Maria's breath caught. Mr. Whitmore, Alexander. Please. I think we're past formalities. Alexander, she said softly, and the sound of his name on her lips did something to his heart. I think you're being very generous, but I also think you need to be careful. About expectations. About boundaries. About. She trailed off. About what? About whether this is gratitude or something else. There it was. The question his mother had raised, now spoken aloud by the woman at the center of it. I don't know, Alexander said honestly. All I know is that I haven't felt this alive in years. And it started the night I saw you protecting Emma. When I saw what real love looks like. A tear slipped down Maria's cheek. Alexander, I'm your employee. Emma and I are here because of your kindness. That's not a foundation for anything else. the power imbalance alone.
I know all of that.
I'm not asking for anything, Maria. I'm just trying to understand what I'm feeling. They sat in silence, the afternoon sun warm on their faces, everything and nothing said between them. Inside, Emma woke from her nap and called for her mama, and the moment passed. But as Alexander watched Maria go to her daughter, he knew with absolute certainty that his life had been irrevocably changed. The only question was, what was he going to do about it? Section 4. The Complications. The next month brought changes that rippled through Alexander's carefully ordered world like stones thrown into still water. Emma started attending a prestigious preschool, tuition paid by Alexander despite Maria's protests, where she flourished under the attention of skilled teachers. Maria enrolled full-time in her business program at the local university, her schedule now split between classes, studying, and her reduced but still significant responsibilities at the estate. And Alexander? Alexander found himself restructuring his entire life around two people who had once been merely names on a payroll. "You're doing it again," Derek said, watching Alexander check his phone for the third time during their tennis match. "Doing what?" "That thing where you're physically here, but mentally somewhere else. You used to do it during board meetings. Now you do it everywhere except the estate." Derek served, and Alexander missed the return completely.
See?
Point proven. What's so fascinating on that phone? Alexander glanced at the screen, where a text from Maria sat unanswered. "Emma drew you another picture. She says it's a dragon protecting a castle. Very important, apparently." A smile tugged at his lips before he could stop it. "Oh man," Derek said, lowering his racket. "You've got it bad." "I don't have anything," Alexander protested, but even to his own ears, it sounded weak.
"Dude,
you just smiled at your phone like it told you you'd won the lottery. That's not nothing." Derek walked to the bench, grabbing his water bottle. "So are you going to do something about it or just pine from a distance like some Victorian gentleman?" "It's not that simple." "It never is." "But that's not actually an answer to my question." Alexander sat beside his friend, running a hand through his sweat-dampened hair. "She works for me, Derek. She's financially dependent on me. Her daughter's education depends on me. How could I possibly make a move without it being coercive, even if I wanted to?" "So, you do want to?"
Did he?
Alexander thought about the way his heart rate increased when Maria entered a room. The way he'd memorized her class schedule so he could coincidentally be around when she got home, just to ask about her day. The way Emma's hugs had become the highlight of his week. The way he'd started imagining futures that looked nothing like the one he'd planned. "Yes," he admitted. "God help me, yes." Derek whistled low. "Okay. So, what are you going to do about it?" "Nothing. I can't do anything about it. Not while the power dynamic is what it is." "Then change the power dynamic."
"How?"
Derek shrugged.
"I don't know, man."
"You're the billionaire genius. Figure it out. But don't wait too long. Life's short, and happiness is rare. If you've found something real, don't let it slip away because of logistics." The conversation haunted Alexander for days. Change the power dynamic.
But how?
He couldn't fire Maria. That would only make things worse. He couldn't reduce her hours or responsibilities without it seeming like a demotion. And he couldn't simply confess his feelings and hope for the best, not when she had so much to lose. The solution, when it came to him, was both obvious and terrifying. He called a meeting with his attorney and his financial advisor, laying out a plan that made both men exchange worried glances. "You want to do what?" Gerald, his attorney, said carefully. "I want to establish Maria Santos as an independent consultant, pay off her student loans, set up an education trust for Emma, and transition her from employee to someone who works with me, not for me." Alexander, his financial advisor, Patricia, said gently, You understand how this looks, don't you? I understand that I'm trying to eliminate a power imbalance that prevents me from being honest about my feelings. Or, Gerald interjected, you're potentially creating a situation where it looks like you're buying affection. You're making this woman financially independent and then pursuing her romantically. The optics are. I don't care about the optics, Alexander snapped. Then, more quietly, I care about doing the right thing. And the right thing is making sure Maria has choices. Real choices. That she's with me if she's with me because she wants to be, not because she needs the job or the benefits. Patricia and Gerald exchanged another look. If you're determined to do this, Patricia said, at least do it smart. Don't dump it all on her at once. Take it in stages. And for God's sake, don't propose or confess your feelings immediately after. Give her time to adjust, to understand that these gifts come with no strings attached. I'm not an idiot, Alexander said, though lately he'd begun to wonder. 2 weeks later, Alexander asked Maria to meet him in his study. She arrived looking nervous, probably wondering if she'd done something wrong. Please sit, Alexander said, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. I want to discuss your future here. Maria's face went pale. Is this about ending my employment?
No.
God, no. Alexander realized how this must look. I'm sorry. I'm doing this all wrong. Let me start over. He took a breath. Maria, you've been taking business classes for 2 months now. Your professors rave about you. You're getting straight A's while raising a daughter and maintaining your responsibilities here. You're exceptional. Thank you, but I've been thinking about what comes next for you after graduation, and I have a proposal. He slid a folder across the desk. I want to offer you a position as a business development consultant. You'd work on special projects, help me evaluate potential investments from a different perspective. The pay would be substantial, more than triple what you make now. You'd have an office here if you wanted, or you could work remotely. Flexible hours. Full benefits. A signing bonus to pay off your student loans. Maria stared at the folder as if it might explode. I don't understand. I haven't even finished my degree yet. You will. And when you do, I want you to have options. Real options. I want you to be able to choose your next step based on what you want, not based on what you can afford. Slowly, Maria opened the folder. As she read through the contract, her eyes widened. Alexander, this is too much. Way too much. I'm not qualified for this kind of salary. You're more qualified than half the consultants I currently work with. And you bring something they don't, genuine perspective. You understand what it's like to struggle, to have real stakes in financial decisions. That's valuable. But why? Maria's voice shook. Why would you do this? We both know this isn't just about business. Here it was. The moment of truth. You're right, Alexander said. It's not just about business. But I need you to understand something. This offer stands regardless of anything else. Whether you accept this and we never speak of anything personal again, or whether. He trailed off. Whether what? Whether I tell you that I've fallen for you, Alexander said quietly. That somewhere between broken crystal and butterfly secrets, I stopped being able to imagine my life without you and Emma in it. That I think about you constantly. That I've never felt this way about anyone. Maria's hands trembled on the contract. Tears spilled down her cheeks. Alexander, you can't say things like that. Why not? Because I work for you. Because you hold all the power here. Because even if I wanted to. She stopped abruptly, covering her mouth. Even if you wanted to what? Alexander's heart was pounding. Even if I felt the same way, Maria whispered, which I can't admit, because it would be professional suicide and emotional manipulation and what if you didn't work for me anymore? Alexander interrupted. What if you were my colleague? My equal? What if there was no power imbalance? There will always be a power imbalance. You're a billionaire, Alexander. I'm a single mother with a mountain of debt. You own this estate. Emma and I live in your guest house. How could there ever not be an imbalance? She was right, of course. But Alexander refused to accept it. Then help me fix it, he said.
Take the job.
Pay off your debts. Build your career. Become financially independent. And then, if you still feel anything for me, we can figure out what comes next. No pressure. No expectations. Just possibility. Maria was crying openly now. You're asking me to wait? To build my entire future on the possibility that this might work.
No.
I'm asking you to build your future because you deserve it, regardless of what happens between us. But I'm also asking you to believe that I'm serious about this.
About you.
About Emma. About building something real. What if I can't do it? Maria asked. What if I take all of this and still can't be what you need? What if Emma and I are too messy, too complicated, too much? Alexander stood and walked around the desk, kneeling in front of her chair. Maria, you and Emma are the best thing that's ever happened to me. You make me want to be better. To do better. You've shown me what love actually looks like, not some sanitized, convenient version, but real love that protects and sacrifices and shows up every single day. I'm scared, Maria admitted, of getting this wrong, of hurting Emma if this doesn't work out, of losing everything if I misread this. I'm scared too, Alexander said. Terrified, actually. But I'm more scared of not trying, of letting you slip away because I was too cautious or too worried about what people might think. They sat in silence, the weight of decisions and possibilities hanging between them. Finally, Maria spoke. I need time.
To think about this.
About all of it. Take all the time you need, Alexander said. The offer stands regardless. And Maria? I meant what I said. No strings attached. If you want the job but nothing else, I'll respect that. Maria nodded, gathering up the contract with shaking hands. As she stood to leave, Emma's voice echoed from somewhere in the house. Mama, where are you? I need help with the dragon's wings. A watery laugh escaped Maria. Even in the middle of life-changing decisions, motherhood calls. Go, Alexander said softly. We can talk more later. But before Maria left, she turned back. Alexander, thank you for seeing me, for seeing Emma, for caring enough to want to do this right, even when it's hard. You're worth doing it right for, he replied. After she left, Alexander sat alone in his study, wondering if he'd just made the bravest decision of his life or the stupidest. Only time would tell. Section 5. The Risk Worth Taking. Spring arrived at the Whitmore estate like a promise, painting the gardens in shades of hope. Maria had signed the consultant contract 3 weeks prior, and Alexander had been true to his word. He'd maintained professional boundaries, giving her space to adjust to her new role and financial independence. It was killing him. Every day, he watched her transform. With her student loans paid off and a substantial salary, Maria moved with a confidence that had always been there, but now had room to shine. She contributed ideas in meetings that made his senior advisors sit up and take notice. She challenged his assumptions and forced him to think about business decisions from angles he'd never considered. And every day, he fell more deeply in love with her. Emma, meanwhile, had bloomed at preschool. She came home with paintings and stories, new friends and new words. She'd stopped being afraid in the big house, instead treating it like her personal kingdom. She still asked Alexander to admire her artwork and still insisted he read her bedtime stories when he was around. Again, Emma demanded, as Alexander finished The Velveteen Rabbit for the 3rd time. They were curled up in the playroom, Emma in her pajamas, refusing to go to the guest house for actual bedtime. Emma, mi amor, Mr. Alexander has been very patient, but it's really time for bed, Maria said from the doorway, her expression fond. But Mama, we didn't get to the best part. We've read the best part 3 times, Alexander said, booping Emma's nose. And if I don't let you go to bed, your mama is going to fire me. Mama can't fire you. You're the boss, Emma said with 3-year-old logic. Actually, your mama is my colleague now, which means she absolutely can tell me when I'm wrong. Emma considered this. Okay, but tomorrow, can we read about the dragon princess? Absolutely. But only if you go to bed right now with no complaints. Deal. Emma threw her arms around Alexander's neck, then scrambled down and ran to her mother. Carry me, Mama. I'm too sleepy to walk. Maria scooped up her daughter, shooting Alexander a grateful look. Thank you. You didn't have to read to her tonight. I wanted to. It was the truth. Reading to Emma had become one of his favorite parts of the day. After Maria carried Emma out, Alexander remained in the playroom, surrounded by the evidence of a child's joy, art supplies and books, stuffed animals, and building blocks. His phone buzzed. A text from his mother. Charity gala next Saturday. Bring a date. It's been long enough since Catherine. People are starting to whisper. Alexander stared at the message, a sudden clarity washing over him. He was tired of waiting, tired of being careful, tired of pretending that his feelings for Maria were just going to go away if he gave them enough time. Life was short. Derek had been right about that. And Alexander had spent too much of his life making safe choices that led to empty victories. He found Maria in the guest house kitchen making tea. She looked up, surprised. Alexander? Is everything okay? I need to ask you something. Maria's expression turned wary. Okay. There's a charity gala next Saturday. It's for the Children's Hospital, a cause I support. I was wondering if you'd go with me. As your consultant? Maria asked carefully. As my date. The words hung in the air between them. Maria set down her tea mug with shaking hands. Alexander, we talked about this. About waiting. I know what we talked about. And I've given you space. I've respected the boundaries. But Maria, I can't keep pretending that I don't feel what I feel. I love you. I love Emma. And I know it's complicated and messy, and there are still power dynamics to navigate, but I also know that I don't want to waste another day not being honest about what I want. And what do you want? Maria's voice was barely a whisper.
You.
A life with you and Emma. Not because I'm trying to save you or rescue you, but because you make me want to be the best version of myself. Because Emma has taught me what unconditional love looks like. Because when I imagine my future now, it looks nothing like what I'd planned, and that doesn't scare me anymore. It excites me. Tears streamed down Maria's face. I'm terrified, Alexander, of this being real, of it not lasting, of Emma getting hurt if we try this, and it doesn't work. I'm terrified too, Alexander admitted, stepping closer. But I'm more terrified of looking back in 10 years and wondering, what if? What if we'd been brave? What if we'd tried? What about your family? Your social circle? They'll never accept me, a former maid with a child. The scandal. Let them talk. I don't care about scandal. I care about waking up in a house that feels like a home. About hearing Emma's laugh and your voice. About building something real with someone who sees me, not my bank account. Maria covered her face with her hands. You're asking me to risk everything.
No.
I'm asking you to trust that what we have is worth the risk. And I'm promising you that I'll spend every day proving that your trust isn't misplaced. For a long moment, Maria didn't move. Then, slowly, she lowered her hands. Her eyes were red from crying, but there was something else there too, hope. One date, she said. I'll go to the gala with you. But Alexander, I need you to understand, this isn't just about me anymore. Emma has to come first. Always. If we do this, and it doesn't work out, She's the one who'll be hurt. She already loves you. If you decide this isn't what you want. I won't, Alexander interrupted. Maria, I promise you, I'm in this. All the way. For you and for Emma. You can't promise that. You don't know. Then let me prove it to you. One day at a time. Starting with one date. Maria searched his face, looking for something. Doubt, perhaps, or insincerity. Alexander held her gaze, letting her see everything he felt. Finally, she nodded. Okay, one date, but I'm going to need a dress. Alexander couldn't help it. He laughed, relief flooding through him. I know an excellent personal shopper. Of course you do, Maria said, but she was smiling through her tears. The week leading up to the gala felt both endless and too short. Alexander found himself nervous in a way he'd never been before any business meeting or merger. This mattered more than quarterly earnings or stock prices. This was his heart, laid bare. He arranged for Emma to have a special sleepover with Mrs. Chun, complete with movies and popcorn and her favorite books. Emma was thrilled at the prospect of a big girls' sleepover, though she made Alexander promise to tell her all about the fancy party the next day. When Saturday arrived, Alexander dressed with care. A custom tuxedo, his best cufflinks, his father's vintage watch. He felt like a teenager getting ready for prom, not a 33-year-old billionaire attending his 100th charity event. When he knocked on the guest house door at 7, his mouth went dry. Maria stood in the doorway wearing a deep purple dress, her favorite color, he remembered, that was elegant without being ostentatious. Her dark hair was swept up, revealing the graceful line of her neck. She'd done her makeup subtly, just enough to enhance her natural beauty. She looked stunning, but more than that, she looked like herself. Not trying to be something she wasn't, just Maria. You're staring, she said, a blush creeping up her cheeks. You're beautiful. You clean up pretty well yourself, Maria replied, but he could hear the nervousness in her voice. In the car, Maria fidgeted with her clutch. Alexander, I need to tell you something before we get there. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. I need you to know that I've felt this way for longer than I've admitted. Even to myself. She took a breath. It started small. The way you'd ask about my classes. The way you'd listen when I talked. The way you treated Emma like she mattered, not like she was an inconvenience. And it scared me because I kept telling myself it was just gratitude. Just appreciation for a kind employer. And now? Alexander asked softly. Now I know it's more than that. Has been for a while. And it terrifies me because I've been hurt before. Because I have Emma to protect. Because this could go so wrong. Or it could go so right, Alexander said, reaching over to take her hand. Their fingers intertwined, and something settled in Alexander's chest. This was right. He'd never been more sure of anything. The gala was held at the city's most prestigious hotel, a glittering affair with champagne and designer gowns and society's elite. As Alexander and Maria entered, he felt eyes turn toward them, saw the whispers start. They're staring, Maria murmured. Let them, Alexander replied, keeping her hand firmly in his. Throughout the evening, Alexander introduced Maria as his business consultant and his date, making it clear to everyone that she was there by his side as his equal. Some people were gracious. Others were barely civil. Catherine was there with a new fiancé, shooting daggers across the room. But Alexander didn't care. Because Maria was brilliant, handling every conversation with grace and intelligence. She spoke thoughtfully about the children's hospital, about the importance of accessible healthcare, about her own experiences navigating the system as a single mother. People listened. And those who'd started the evening with prejudice ended it impressed. During the dancing portion of the evening, Alexander led Maria onto the floor. As they swayed to the music, her head resting against his chest, he felt a peace he'd never known. I could get used to this, Maria admitted softly. Good. Because I plan on taking you to many more of these. If you'll have me. Maria pulled back to look at him. Alexander, I need you to understand what you're signing up for. My life is messy. Emma has nightmares sometimes. She gets sick. She has tantrums. I have student debt. Well, I did. I have family complications. My mother has health issues. I'm not some fairy tale princess waiting to be swept away. I don't want a fairy tale princess, Alexander said. I want you.
The real you.
Nightmares and tantrums and complications and all. Because that's real life, Maria. And I've spent too long living a perfect life that was perfectly empty. What if I can't fit into your world? Then we'll build a new world. One that fits us both. Maria's eyes filled with tears again. Happy tears this time. I love you, she whispered. I've been trying not to, but I do. I love you. Joy exploded in Alexander's chest. Say it again. I love you. I love you too, Alexander said, and then he was kissing her right there on the dance floor, in front of everyone who mattered and everyone who didn't. When they broke apart, Maria was laughing. Well, that's going to be in the society pages. I certainly hope so, Alexander said. They stayed until the end of the gala, then drove home through the quiet streets, hands clasped, hearts full. At the guest house, Alexander walked Maria to the door. I should check on Emma, Maria said. I know. But first. Alexander reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Maria's eyes widened. Alexander. It's not what you think. Or maybe it is, but not yet. Just open it. Inside the box was a delicate silver key. It's to the house, Alexander explained. The main house. I want you and Emma to move in. Not to the guest house. To your own wing, your own space, but part of the house. Part of my life. Officially. Alexander, that's too much, I know. Too fast. But Maria, I don't want to waste time. I want to build a life with you. And I want Emma to grow up knowing she belongs here. That this is her home too. Maria stared at the key, then at Alexander. Are you sure? Really, truly sure? I've never been more sure of anything. Maria took the key, her hand trembling. Then yes. Yes, we'll move in. But Alexander? We take this slow, okay? For Emma's sake. We build this right. We'll build it however you want, Alexander promised. As long as we build it together. They kissed again, sweet and soft and full of promise. And when they finally pulled apart, Alexander could see his entire future reflected in Maria's eyes. It looked nothing like what he'd planned. It looked perfect. Section 6. The home they built. 6 months later, the Whitmore estate had become something Alexander's younger self wouldn't have recognized, a home filled with laughter and life, sticky fingerprints on expensive windows, and the sound of a child's voice echoing through halls that had once known only silence. Emma's toys were scattered across the living room, despite the organizational systems Alexander had installed. Maria's textbooks occupied his study, and the kitchen constantly smelled of something delicious, flan or fresh bread, or the Colombian coffee Maria had introduced him to. It was chaotic. It was messy. It was everything Alexander had never known he needed. Papa. Papa, come quick. Emma's voice rang out from the garden. Alexander looked up from his laptop, his heart swelling at the word Emma had started using 3 months ago. He'd cried the first time she'd called him Papa, unable to believe he'd been given this gift, not just Maria's love, but Emma's trust. He found Emma in the garden, her hands cupped carefully around something. Maria stood nearby, her baby bump visible under her loose dress. They'd learned last month that Emma was going to be a big sister. Emma had taken the news with the seriousness of a 3-year-old soon-to-be 4, declaring that she would teach the baby everything important, like how to share cookies and why butterflies were magic. Look. Emma opened her hands carefully, revealing a butterfly with brilliant blue wings. It came back. The one that told me secrets. Wow. Alexander breathed, crouching down. That's incredible, sweetheart. Do you think it remembers me? Emma asked, her voice full of wonder. I think butterflies always remember people with kind hearts, Maria said, resting a hand on her stomach. And you have the kindest heart I know. The butterfly fluttered away, and Emma chased after it with the boundless energy of childhood. Alexander stood and wrapped his arms around Maria from behind, his hands covering hers on their growing child. How are you feeling? He asked. Tired.
Happy.
A little nauseated. Wondering how I got so lucky. I'm the lucky one, Alexander murmured against her hair. We could argue about that, Maria said, turning in his arms. But I think we're both pretty blessed. They'd gotten married 2 months ago in a small ceremony in this very garden, nothing like the society wedding Alexander would have had with Catherine. Just close friends, family, and Emma as the flower girl, taking her role very seriously and announcing to everyone that her mama was marrying her papa and now they'd be a real family forever and ever. Alexander's mother had cried. So had Maria's mother, who'd flown in from Colombia, her health stabilized thanks to the medical care Alexander had arranged. Even Derek had gotten misty-eyed during the vows. The society pages had buzzed for weeks. Some people were scandalized. Others were charmed. Alexander had learned to care less about others' opinions with each passing day. I have something for you, Alexander said now, reaching into his pocket. Maria raised an eyebrow. It's not our anniversary, or my birthday, or any special occasion I'm forgetting in my pregnancy brain fog. It's a Tuesday, Alexander said, pulling out an envelope. And Tuesdays are Emma's favorite day because that's when Mrs. Chun makes chocolate chip cookies. So I'd say that's occasion enough. Inside the envelope were keys and a deed. Maria's eyes widened as she read. Alexander, you're giving me the guest house? Not giving. It's already yours. I had it transferred to your name. It's your property, Maria.
Completely.
So you always have something that's just yours, independent of me. Maria's eyes filled with tears, a common occurrence these days, though she blamed pregnancy hormones. You don't have to do this. I trust you. I trust us. I know. But I also know that security matters. That independence matters. And I want you to have both. He cupped her face gently. I never want you to feel trapped or dependent. I want you to be here because you choose to be every single day. I do choose this, Maria said fiercely. I choose you. I choose this life. I choose every complicated, beautiful moment of it. They kissed, soft and sweet, until Emma came running back. You're kissing again, she announced, though she was giggling. That's all you guys do. That's because we love each other very much, Maria said, scooping Emma up. And someday, when you're much, much older, you'll understand. I already understand, Emma said matter-of-factly. Love is when you share your cookies and read stories and protect people from scary things. Right, Papa? Alexander's throat tightened. That's exactly right, sweetheart. You're very wise. I know, Emma said with complete confidence. That's what the butterfly told me. That evening, after Emma was in bed and the house was quiet, Alexander and Maria sat in the study, reviewing plans for the new community center they were building together. It would offer childcare, job training, and educational support for single parents, a project born from Maria's vision and funded by Alexander's resources. We need to adjust the budget here, Maria said, pointing to a line item. The childcare equipment costs are higher than projected. Approved, Alexander said. Whatever it takes to make it right. You can't just say yes to everything I suggest, Maria protested. You're supposed to push back, make me defend my positions.
Why?
Your positions are almost always right. Alexander grinned at her exasperated expression.
Fine.
Tell me why we need the more expensive equipment. Because these are kids whose parents can't afford the fancy stuff they have in wealthy preschools. This center might be their only chance at a quality early education. We can't cheap out on the foundations of their learning.
See?
Right again. Alexander pulled her into his lap, careful of her belly. You're going to revolutionize how we think about community investment. Maria corrected. We're going to do it together. Together, Alexander agreed, kissing her temple. His phone buzzed. A text from his mother. Dinner next Sunday? I want to see my granddaughter and find out how my other grandchild is growing. Eleanor had embraced Maria and Emma with an enthusiasm that had shocked everyone, especially Alexander. She doted on Emma, took Maria shopping for maternity clothes, and had announced to anyone who would listen that her son had finally found someone with substance and sense. Your mother wants Sunday dinner, Alexander said. Again? We just saw her on Tuesday. She's making up for lost time. Said she wasted too many years at stuffy events when she could have been enjoying family. Maria laughed. Your mother has become a completely different person. So have I, Alexander said quietly. Thanks to you. No, Maria said, turning to look at him directly. You were always this person. You just needed permission to be him. Maybe she was right. Or maybe they'd both changed each other. Either way, Alexander couldn't imagine going back to the life he'd had before that night when he'd seen a young mother protecting her child. That moment had changed everything. A year ago, he'd been engaged to a woman he didn't love, living in a house that wasn't a home, measuring his worth in dollars and deals. Now he was married to a woman who challenged him daily, raising a daughter who taught him to see magic in butterflies, and preparing to welcome a new child who would carry both his and Maria's hopes forward. His success had never felt more meaningful than when he watched Maria present a business proposal to investors, commanding the room with confidence born of hard-won knowledge. His wealth had never felt more purposeful than when he saw Emma's preschool classmates, children from all backgrounds, playing together at the new community center. What are you thinking about? Maria asked, studying his face. How grateful I am, Alexander said. For that night. For Catherine being awful. For every choice that led us here. Even the painful ones? Especially the painful ones. They taught me what matters. Emma's voice called out from upstairs. Mama, I had a dream about the baby. Maria sighed, but smiled. So much for an early night. I'll go, Alexander said, standing and helping Maria to her feet. You rest. I want to hear about this dream, anyway. Emma's room was painted in soft colors, with glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling that Alexander had spent an entire evening installing. She sat up in bed, her curls wild, clutching her favorite stuffed dragon. Tell me about your dream, sweetheart, Alexander said, settling beside her. The baby was here, and she had Mama's smile and your eyes, and she laughed and laughed. And you know what else? What else? She could talk to butterflies too, just like me. Emma's eyes shone with excitement. We're going to be best friends, Papa. I'm going to teach her everything. I bet you will, Alexander said, smoothing her hair. You're going to be the best big sister. Will you still love me the same when the baby comes? Emma asked, suddenly serious. You won't forget about me? Alexander's heart clenched. He pulled Emma into his arms, holding her tight. Emma, listen to me. I could never, ever forget about you. You're my first daughter, my first teacher about what love really means. The baby will be lucky to have you as a big sister, and I'll be lucky to be Papa to both of you. My love doesn't divide, it multiplies. Understand?
Emma nodded against his chest.
Like when you share cookies, everyone gets some, but there's still enough? Exactly like that. After settling Emma back to sleep, Alexander returned to find Maria in their bedroom, looking at something on her phone. She was crying but smiling. "What is it?" he asked, concerned. "Look," she said, showing him the screen. It was the community center's social media page, where families had been posting stories about how the programs had changed their lives. A single mother had gotten a job thanks to the training program. A struggling student had passed his GED with tutoring help. A 3-year-old had spoken his first words in the early intervention program. "We did this," Maria whispered. "We're actually making a difference." "You did this," Alexander corrected. "This was your vision. I just helped fund it."
No.
"This is us. Together. That's the whole point. Neither of us could have done this alone. But together?" She gestured at the screen. "Together, we're changing lives." Alexander pulled her close, feeling the gentle flutter of their baby between them. "I love you," he said. "I love this life. I love what we're building." "I love you too," Maria replied. "Even when you leave your socks on the bedroom floor." "I do not." "You do. Every single day." They both laughed, and Alexander realized this was it. This was the moment he'd remember when he was old. Not a business triumph or a financial milestone, but this, laughing with his wife about socks while their daughter slept down the hall and their second child grew safe and warm. This was wealth. This was success. This was everything. Epilogue. 5 years later. Emma stood at the front of the elementary school auditorium, 9 years old now and confident in a way that made Alexander's heart swell with pride. She was presenting her project on community development, inspired, she'd told everyone, by her parents' work. Maria sat beside Alexander, their 5-year-old son, Lucas, squirming in her lap. The toddler had Alexander's eyes and Maria's spirit, a combination that meant the household was never quiet. And this is why community centers matter. Emma concluded her presentation. Because everyone deserves a chance. Everyone deserves to be seen and helped and loved. My mama taught me that. And my papa learned it too, even though he used to be really rich and didn't understand. The audience laughed. Alexander groaned. "She's not wrong," Maria whispered, trying not to giggle. After the presentation, as they walked to the car, Emma chattering about her plans for her next project, Alexander looked at his family. Maria, now his business partner in multiple ventures, still challenging him daily and making him better. Emma, growing into a compassionate, brilliant young woman who wanted to change the world. Lucas, whose butterfly collection rivaled his sister's and who had just announced he wanted to be a community helper when he grew up. This was his empire now. Not the businesses or the investments or the real estate holdings, though those existed, channeled now toward purpose rather than profit. No, his real empire was this, a family built on love, a home filled with laughter, and a legacy of choosing people over perfection. It had started with one moment, a billionaire seeing his maid protecting her toddler from cruelty and making the choice to step in, to care, to change. That moment had changed everything. And as Emma ran ahead, Lucas toddling after her, and Maria's hand found his, Alexander sent a silent thank you to whatever force in the universe had brought them together. Because this beautiful, messy, complicated, perfect life was worth more than all the money in the world. The end. Sometimes the greatest fortune isn't what you have, but who you choose to share your life with. Alexander learned that true wealth is measured not in dollars, but in moments, butterfly chases, bedtime stories, and the courage to choose love over comfort. And in the end, he discovered that the best investment he ever made wasn't in business. It was in the family he built with Maria and Emma, one day, One choice, one act of kindness at a time.